Hi everyone, it's Luke here from Young Writers, and I'm here today with two very special people, and we are going to be celebrating and having a chat about the upcoming Global Environment Day. So, how are you two doing?
Very well, thank you.
Very good, thank you very much.
Have you been enjoying the wonderful weather that this week has given us?
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's been. We live right near the sea, so it's a bit like being in the south of France at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Lush. Well, I always start off with this really broad question. However, I think it kind of sums everything up quite well. But could you both, in turn, give me an introduction into the world of, like the world of Lydia Corry, the world of Sally Gardner?
Sally, do you want to go first?
I knew you were going to do that. So the world of Sally Gardner is basically, I write most of the time. I am on a very steep deadline for a book that's coming out, and I just spend my time writing. I sometimes wonder if I have a life, but no, I love what I do. I'm very lucky to do what I do, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing the Tindims. They were a real treat, the Tindims. Yeah. Is that enough of my world, or do you need...
Well, I'm sure we'll get into it a bit more, but it sounds like an absolutely wonderful world. I think that sounds like the dream for a lot of people probably watching. So it sounds absolutely fantastic. And how about yourself, Lydia?
Well, similarly, I'm in the world of illustrating, so doing mostly in my studio drawing, trying to explain to my 5-year-old daughter that it is work, because she just sees her mum upstairs drawing pictures and thinks that can't be right. But yeah, I'm illustrating lots of different kinds of books at the moment. So I've just done the Tindims with Sally, who's also my mother. But I also do picture books and non-fiction and some slightly older fiction as well. So it's a real broad spectrum, which keeps it really interesting for me.
As you said, I just want to jump on that. You said that obviously you two are related, which to me is absolutely fascinating. How did that collaboration come about? Obviously, how it came about, but how did the decision to kind of make a book together happen?
Well, we both have done different projects with the same editor at Zephyr, so we both have a kind of history there, and yeah, me and Mum spend a lot of time walking our dogs on the beach, talking everything about children's books and storytelling's always been a big part of our relationship. So the Tindims just sort of happened quite organically on walks along the beach, and we were thinking about actually stories for my daughter, really, things that she would love. And I was a massive fan of The Borrowers when I was a child, so that was a big influence on the Tindims. So yeah, it was quite a kind of, it sort of started with lots of small conversations, and then we just started talking about characters, and it all just kind of took off, didn't it?
It happened really, really quickly. I have to give Lydia full credit for coming up with the initial idea. She came and said, look, what about if we had an island which was made out of rubbish that little creatures lived on? And she said, I think you said it on a Friday, didn't you? I think we had this conversation on a Friday. And on Saturday, I was hoovering, which I don't often do, but I was. And I just suddenly, the Tindims, I just thought, Tindims, I phoned Lydia up immediately and said, what do you think? The Tindims? And she went, yep. And after that, they came really quickly, all the little characters, and then I came up, when I did Admiral Bonnet, I came up with, I don't think it was Admiral, I just think I had Mrs. Bonnet, and Lydia very rightly said, no, Mum, she should be an Admiral. And that was really great, that sort of put them into another.
You had Captain Spoons, and then it was Mrs. Bonnet, and I thought that wasn't right at all. She needed she needed a rank, yeah.
Yeah. And also it was so good because the sizing was so important, and we got Broom, who's very, very tall and doesn't look exactly like all the other little squat little Tindims.
Tall compared to the other Tindims, still only this size.
Yeah, big.
And it was just, and one of my favorite characters is Pinch. But what we basically got together was like a little comedy dell'arte company of characters that could just be used to do they really became incredibly versatile over these 4 books. It's so good when you put out a cast of characters and they actually manage to do what you want. You don't do a story and think, oh, we're missing a character. You know, we had them all, so it was good.
Yeah, that was really the base of it, was a lot of character work at the beginning and going back and forth. So I would be drawing, I started with silhouettes just to try and get them all so they were kind of distinctly different, and they have, I think we've got sort of 3 little family groups and then offshoots, and they all wanted to be very quickly different from one another. And yeah, and so it was I mean, incredibly easy working with the author that is also your mother, because the whole process is just free flowing. So I'd send sketches, Mum would talk to me about the writing, I read drafts, it was very sort of organic and back and forth, kind of unlike any other project. You know, usually you get the manuscript, it's very fixed as an illustrator, and it's then your job to try and find out what the author wants. But this was something that was sort of, we both knew what we wanted.
I can imagine that kind of reflects into the book as well, though, you know, that creativity, the much more, as you say, like flowy vibe of it, being able to kind of throw things back and forth. I just find it really interesting, the dynamic and the working dynamic. I don't know if there's many people out there that could work with a relative. So it's amazing, and it creates such an interesting story. It kind of gives a niche, and I think it's amazing. It's fascinating.
Thanks.
So you kind of introduced us into your world, but could you introduce us into the world of the Tindims, because that's what we're here for?
Well, they are a magical little group of creatures who have been around longer than the Vikings, really, and they were doing pretty all right with the water and the rubbish, because when the Vikings were around, it was you know, wood and it also sort of biodegradable stuff that just popped away and rotted away, and then they rebuild it again. And then recently they have been really foxed by plastic bottles. And what completely worries them is this word still and sparkling. They can't work out what could be in a bottle, and they can't believe it could be water, because that would be utterly ridiculous. And also it's caused not only them a problem, because they've got Bottle Mountain, which they can't see over and they can't see through. But they've also got, and they've used all the bottles, they've used every bit of plastic they can in the most imaginative ways, but it still keeps coming. And their motto is, rubbish today is treasure tomorrow. And actually it's looking very wobbly, their poor motto, because what do they do if these plastic bottles keep on swimming up? And it is a real problem. So I thought it was quite, I think Lydia and me, we verge a little on this, but I didn't want to frighten children and make them feel, oh God, I've been born into a world that's about to collapse. I just didn't, I felt that was really, I was worried about that, because I think there are a lot of children who go to bed now with nightmares about what's going to happen. But so I wanted it proactive, that they felt they had a role to play, and that they could identify with Skittle, Brew and Pinch. Pinch is a dog. And actually most of Pinch's statements come from Lydia, from my granddaughter, who had a wonderful face of going around going, that's a fact actually, which we all love. So that's what was
yeah, I think it's really cool what you've done, and I think you've hit upon the kind of empowering rather than scaring. You know, we have the younger generation that are coming into this all now, and they are being kind of brought into it, whereas kind of some of the older generations have learned from what they previously thought they knew into this. Now we must make a difference, whereas the younger generation are being brought into, we need to make a change immediately. And it can be scary, and it can be a big thing. And I think, you know, something that's so important is about the fact of everyone can make a difference, and that's something that we've hit upon before here. We gave away like a sustainability starter pack with some reusable kit and things, and it's very much about everyone having a voice. But obviously this is quite specific. So is it something that you guys have a personal connection with, something that you really believe in yourselves?
Definitely. I have a 5-year-old daughter, and everything you say is so true. She's, you know, she's so aware of climate change already at 5, and she wants to be active and doing something. And so the Tindims are sort of a reflection of kind of that little person trying to do something positive. But also we live by the sea, so it's, you know, kind of you do become really aware of pollution and things that are washing up. And so yeah, it is a kind of part of our lives. And but like Mum said, it's important to kind of frame it in a way that is accessible, and also that although that there is this kind of background of kind of climate change and pollution, and hopefully the Tindims have this kind of positive message of conservation, but that also they're really good, fun adventure stories. That was kind of really what we wanted to do too. I mean, growing up, loving books like Swallows and Amazons, and anything that is, as a small child, anything where there's a real sort of sense of adventure, or that the character can really change the narrative, was something that was also really important. So yeah.
And I think the thing about giving children power, we call them the little long legs in the book, and the long legs. And I mean, even if they can start to realize that, you know, the plastic on their magazines needn't be there. I mean, even if just little things like that, and really looking at particularly water bottles, which are not using recyclable water bottles. I think that all needs to be really questioned. We watch them float up on the shore all the time, and netting, and it's just unnecessary. I mean, the trouble with bottles is little fish swim into them and they can't get out because they get bigger, and they're safe in there because nobody can eat them, but then they get bigger and they can't get out, and turtles die in them and fish die in them, and that's just a tragedy, completely unnecessary tragedy.
Yeah, I agree. And it really is the fact that everyone can make a difference. And it's through, you know, books like these where we can, you know, pass on our knowledge, and we can teach the next generation about how to do it without scaring them, and about showing people that really their actions, you know, they do have a consequence. And that works negatively with, you know, using plastic bottles, etc. But it also works positively in when you do go outside and you do pick up some litter, or you do recycle. And anyone can do that, and everyone can do that. And it's about giving everyone the voice and the power. And yeah, I think this book does that. You know, these books do that fantastically. And I think it's really important work as well. It's really important work. And of course, in each book, they go on different adventures, which I find really interesting. You know, the last one was collecting green bottles. And the upcoming one, if you want to tell us about the upcoming one, there's the story that's to come out soon.
Well, I love this one. It's my favorite, and it's this one. It's this one, and it's about a fog that comes to the island. It's a very special fog. It's called a gupper fog, and in it is a luminous squid, and the fog can only carry the luminous squid, but it gets incredibly attached to its luminous squid, and it doesn't want to leave, and it sort of takes over the entirety of the island. And in this sort of fog, Ethel Bedina, who runs the fish hospital, believes the moon has fallen into the sea, and so she's very, very concerned about this. And it's, how do you get the moon back in the sky if it's fallen into the sea, and how do they get rid of the gupper fog? And I was quite interested in the idea of that, you know, we're an island, and we seem to be so panicked about anybody coming to this island now. I just sort of wanted to sort of suggest with my fog that maybe if it's embraced and loved a little, it can turn out to be a rather good thing instead of being pushed away.
The fog becomes a welcome guest at the end of the story. Yeah, it was a really fun one to illustrate, because visually there's so many elements. They kind of the Tindims are trying to work out what this sort of mysterious fog that sort of engulfs them and means that they're sort of carrying torches around the island. They're connecting to one another with bits of string so they don't get lost, and it's kind of ruining their it's ruining their life, isn't it? A little bit. Blocking out the sun. It's a big mystery that sort of needs to be solved.
And bringing up all these fishes from down below.
Yeah, there's the floating moon element is a sort of luminous light. We won't say what it actually is, because that's the mysteries that the Tindims have to solve, but it's attracting all the wrong animals. So all the deep sea creatures are attracted to it, and they're coming too close to the surface, and it's causing a kind of marine Tindim chaos that all has to be sorted out, that involves a submarine trip, some dancing, some festivals. It's all go in this one.
I think
it sounds like a party.
When you talk about the Tindim world, I think what I really love about them is they do have so many festivals. And they have, and they love their tea. They have tea which they do with a stiff upper lip, where they don't quite know what that means. They think it has something to do with rock cakes, but so they're rather sort of wonderful, I think, in that way. Yeah.
It does seem that there is such a world, you know, it's almost like it's not just a story, it's not just a book. You kind of step into this realm where everything is created around them, you know, this Tindim world, and it's this kind of like alternative reality, which is really, really interesting, because anyone can get involved, but also it draws parallels to where we are. So although, you know, children or anyone that reads it steps into another world, universe, whatever, and it's totally separate to us, it's also not, you know, it also draws the similarities and kind of puts that point across, and it's really, really important, and fantastic. And it's such an interesting story, concept, idea that's truly important.
Thank you.
So, to obviously with World Environment Day coming up, if you could ask, tell, implore anyone out there watching, listening, or even those beyond, one thing or a message for them to take home, what would it be?
Can I say I would like to ask everyone to stop eating calamari.
Okay.
And octopuses. I'm sorry, it sounds rather posh to say that, but these are wonderful, wonderful marine creatures which we know very little about. They are extraordinary. They live for ages, and we kill octopuses. I just can't even bear to think about it, actually. And they're one of the little marine life that never gets much of a shout, because it's on every menu, and everyone goes, "Oh, it's just great." You know, actually, please let us not stop doing this, because we'll lose them. We'll lose all our octopus and squid. So my call is for squid and octopus.
Okay, I can get behind that, absolutely. Lydia?
My one would be just to be really mindful about how we use things like plastic and what we then do with it, because it's here for a long, long time. And so, like the book, like within the stories, you know, things that just get thrown away or used once and chucked out and not thought about, they end up affecting somewhere else in the world. Even if it's that we're shipping our rubbish over to other countries, which is terrible, or killing wildlife, there's always a consequence. And so you have to just be really mindful about what you're consuming and how you're getting rid of it.
Can I just also mention that is quite a good illustration of how dreadful this is. There's two. There was, I think it was 24,000 rubber ducks got thrown into the sea by mistake off a container ship. That was 25 years ago, and they're still bobbing up on everyone's shoreline around the world. And the same with, I won't name the company, but the same with trainers. They dumped a whole lot in the sea and they are bobbing up. So we do really need to be mindful of that.
And there are lots of options now. There's ways of not having a plastic toothbrush. There's ways of doing things that mean that you're just, you know, like you said, Luke, just everyone can make a difference, and the difference can be small. It's just changing a couple of things and making some, you know, small decisions in your daily life that have big consequences. You know, if you're not going out and buying bottled water, but you're using your own, think over the course of a lifetime how much that reduces something, and we can all do it. It's not actually tricky.
No, that's exactly it.
And also plastic bottles can be used in very imaginative ways. I've been looking up, because we do things together at the end of the book. But in India, they use plastic bottles in them, like whole gardens are made of containers with plastic bottles. I mean, beautiful things are made from them. And I just think, yeah, well, they're all on YouTube. You can look them up. They're all there to be, enjoyed. Yeah, fantastic. We don't have to throw it all away.
That's it. I think it's so easy now to have the alternatives, like you say, a bamboo toothbrush, or something that someone mentioned on Twitter the other day was to buy the fruit and veg that doesn't come in plastic. It's a really simple thing, and although you may think buying 3 peppers in a wrapper doesn't make that much difference, but if you do that for a week, that's for a year, every week, that's 52 wrappers a year, and then over 10 years it adds up.
Wrappers,
and these little things,
and those wrappers can't be recycled, so the amount, you just have to put them in your bin, and there's so much stuff that we still as a country aren't recycling. So many things that people are putting in their recycling thinking that they can be, and they're not. They're just they're slowing down the recycling process, and then they have to go to landfill, and all of those things are like you say, just pop it in a bag, pop it in a paper bag.
But also, I think, Luke, when you look at countries that really do successful with their recycling, Germany comes up really high. And they have some amazing recycling plants, which again you can watch on it, and they are fascinating, and what they can produce from their recycling. So this country should start building some really superb recycling sites. This is what we need to be doing.
Definitely. Well, that's it. I think the take-home message is knowing this stuff is really important, and reading books such as your own it helps towards that, but also the fact that everyone can truly make a difference, and everyone can do something about it. And these very, very small things that seem minute or pointless in the moment actually aren't, because they do add up, they culminate, and they make a difference, and everyone can do that. And I think that's something that kind of goes throughout your books. So the Tindims Floating Moon is out next week, I believe, June 10th. So, and it's the 4th in the series, so there's 3 more before it. So if you're only just clocking on, you're in luck, because there's 4 to read now instead of 1. So absolutely go and check them out. And also I wish you the absolute best of luck with the launch, and with everything going forward as well. Thank you for your time.
Thanks so much, Luke.
Of course. Thank you. I'll see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.